What's up, ARMY? You guys are not ready for this exclusive tea I'm about to spill. So there's this Grammy-nominated sound engineer in LA who's worked with literally everyone: Drake, Beyonce, The Weeknd. And he just dropped the most insane story about Jimin and JHope's recording sessions. He said, and I quote, "In 25 years of engineering, I've never seen anything like what these two did. Buckle up, because this story is about to blow your minds." Okay, so let me paint you the picture. It's 2:30 a.m. in one of LA's most exclusive recording studios, the kind where a single hour costs more than most people's rent. The studio that's recorded chart toppers for every A-list celebrity you can think of. And there they are, ParkJimin and JungHoseok, just two guys from South Korea who've conquered the world, sitting in this legendary space working on what could be the most important BTS album in history. But what happened next? Even the engineer, let's call him Marcus, a guy who's literally seen it all in the music industry, was left speechless. He told our source, "I've engineered for superstars who throw tantrums, who demand impossible things, who treat staff like servants. But what Jimin and JHope did, it completely changed how I view artistry." Before we dive into the juicy details, let me tell you about Marcus. This isn't some random guy making up stories for clout. We're talking about a 25-year veteran of the music industry. He's got 5 Grammy nominations under his belt, has worked on albums that have sold over 50 million copies worldwide, and his client list reads like a who's who of music royalty. Marcus has seen artists at their highest highs and lowest lows. He's witnessed creative breakthroughs, emotional breakdowns, and everything in between. He's engineered sessions where artists have walked out mid-recording, where creative differences have led to actual fights, and where million-dollar budgets have been blown on pure ego. So when a guy like this, someone who's literally engineered magic for the biggest names in music, says he's never seen anything like what Jimin and JHope did, you know it's something extraordinary. Our insider source, who's worked closely with Marcus for over a decade, reached out specifically because they knew ARMY needed to hear the story. They said Marcus couldn't stop talking about it for weeks after the session. So here's how it went down. It was the 3rd week of August, and Jimin and JHope had been in LA for about 10 days, working intensively on the upcoming BTS album. Word in the industry was that they were putting in 12-hour days, sometimes longer, perfecting every single detail of their contributions to what's being called the comeback of the decade. The session was supposed to be a standard overdub session, you know, adding some final vocal layers, maybe some ad-libs, technical stuff. Nothing too crazy. The studio had been booked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. because, let's be real, that's when the magic happens in music. No distractions, no interruptions, just pure creative energy. Marcus arrived expecting a routine night. He'd worked with K-pop artists before, knew they were professional and hardworking. But he wasn't prepared for what was about to unfold. The track they were working on, and this is where it gets interesting, wasn't even a title track. It was supposed to be a B-side, something deep in the album that only hardcore fans would really dive into. But what happened that night transformed it into something that could reshape their entire musical direction. Marcus said everything was going normally for the first few hours. Jimin was working on his vocal parts, and they sounded incredible, the kind of vocals that give you goosebumps even through studio monitors. JHope was laying down some additional rap sections, and his flow was just insane. But then, around 1:30 a.m., something shifted. Marcus described it as this electric moment where everything just clicked. Apparently, Jimin was listening back to one of his vocal takes when he suddenly stopped the playback and said something to JHope in Korean. JHope's eyes just lit up, and they started this rapid-fire conversation that Marcus couldn't understand, but he could feel the energy in the room completely change. Here's where it gets wild, and this is directly from Marcus's account. Jimin and JHope asked him to record them, but not in the vocal booth. They wanted to record right there in the control room, sitting next to each other on the couch, using just one microphone. Marcus was confused because, professionally speaking, this setup would never give you the clean, separated audio you want for a commercial release. But something in their eyes told him to just trust the process. What happened next is what Marcus called the most organic moment of artistry he's ever witnessed. Jimin and JHope started creating this spontaneous harmony, not just vocally, but conceptually. They were building off each other's ideas in real time, creating melodies and rhythms that seemed to come from some shared consciousness. Now here's the part that blew Marcus's mind from a technical standpoint. Usually, when you have two artists sharing one microphone, you get all sorts of problems, phase issues, uneven levels, voices competing for space in the mix. It's an engineer's nightmare. But somehow, Jimin and JiHope instinctively knew how to position themselves, when to lean in, when to pull back. Marcus said it was like they had some kind of telepathic connection to the microphone and to each other. I've had artists who can't even stay in the same key when they're in separate isolation booths with click tracks and reference vocals, Marcus told our source. But these two were creating this intricate vocal arrangement, completely improvised, sharing one mic, and it sounded like it had been rehearsed for months. The recording they made that night, just over 4 minutes long, captured something that Marcus said couldn't be replicated even if they tried 100 times. It was lightning in a bottle, that perfect storm of talent, chemistry, and spontaneous creativity that defines legendary music moments. But here's the kicker, and this is what really sets the story apart from typical studio sessions. When they finished, Marcus played it back through the studio's $100,000 monitoring system, and everyone in the room just sat in complete silence for the entire 4 minutes. Marcus described what happened next as one of the most emotional moments of his career. After the playback ended, there was this moment of complete silence. Then Jimin started crying. Not sad crying, but that overwhelming emotional release that happens when you've just created something beautiful. JiHope put his arm around Jimin, and Marcus said you could just feel the brotherhood, the years of shared dreams and struggles, the weight of representing their culture on a global stage, all of it contained in that moment. I've seen artists get emotional about their work, Marcus explained, but this was different. This wasn't about ego or commercial success. This was two friends who had just created something that meant everything to them. What Marcus found most remarkable was how this moment of vulnerability translated into the recording. He said you can actually hear the emotion in their voices, not just in the lyrics or melody, but in the way they breathe, the way they support each other's phrases, the way they instinctively know when to give each other space. The assistant engineer, who had been working with Marcus for 3 years, later told him it was the first time he'd ever seen him get emotional during a session. Marcus admits that when he went home that morning, he called his wife and told her, "I just witnessed something special. These kids reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place." Now, here's where the story gets even more interesting from an industry perspective. Marcus, being the professional he is, knew he had captured something extraordinary. But he also knew that this kind of organic, spontaneous recording doesn't always fit into the polished, heavily produced world of modern pop music. The next day, he reached out to some of his contacts at major labels, not to leak anything, but to get advice on how to preserve the integrity of what they had captured while making it commercially viable. The response was unanimous. Everyone who heard even a snippet of the recording said it was something special. One A&R executive from a major label told Marcus, "This is the kind of recording that reminds you why music matters. It's not perfect technically, but it's perfect emotionally." Word started spreading quietly through LA's music industry circles about this magical session with the BTS members. Marcus said he's had more calls in the past few weeks from industry professionals wanting to work with Jimin and JiHope than he's ever received about any other artists. What makes the story so significant isn't just that Jimin and JiHope created something beautiful, although they absolutely did. It's what this reveals about their artistic growth and their relationship as creative partners. Marcus pointed out something that really struck him. Most artists, especially at BTS's level of success, come into the studio with everything pre-planned. They have demo tracks, written lyrics, arrangements mapped out to the second. It's efficient, it's professional, and it usually results in polished products. But what Jimin and JiHope did that night required a level of trust in themselves, in each other, and in the creative process that's incredibly rare in today's music industry. They were willing to be vulnerable, to potentially waste expensive studio time to create something without knowing if it would work. That kind of fearless creativity is what separates good artists from legendary ones, Marcus observed. They weren't trying to create a hit. They were trying to create truth. This approach speaks to something larger about BTS's artistry and why they've been able to maintain their authenticity even as they've achieved unprecedented global success. They haven't forgotten that music, at its core, is about human connection. So what does this mean for the upcoming BTS album? Based on Marcus's account, we might be looking at something that pushes boundaries not just for BTS, but for pop music in general. The fact that the spontaneous recording happened on what was supposed to be a B-side track suggests that the entire album might have this kind of organic, emotionally raw energy. If Jimin and JHope are willing to take these kinds of creative risks on deeper cuts, imagine what they're doing with the title tracks. Marcus mentioned that the recording they made that night has become a reference point for other sessions. Artists and producers are asking him, "Can we create that same kind of magic?" But as Marcus explained, you can't manufacture that. It comes from years of friendship, shared experiences, and a deep understanding of each other as artists and as people. ARMY, I think we're about to witness something extraordinary. If this one story from one night in an LA studio is any indication, the upcoming BTS album isn't just going to be a comeback, it's going to be a statement about what authentic artistry looks like in 2025. Marcus ended his story by saying, "I've worked with the biggest names in music, but that night with Jimin and JHope reminded me that true artistry isn't about perfection. It's about connection. And those two have something special." What do you think, ARMY? Are you ready for this level of raw, authentic BTS? Drop your theories in the comments about what this could mean for their sound evolution. And don't forget to subscribe for more exclusive behind-the-scenes content. Remember, we purple you.